The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. DeSantis, for 5 minutes.
Director Comey, violent crime is up in this country, isn't it?
Our UCR stats we just released show a rise in homicide and other violent crime in 15.
The violent crime, I think, was about 4%, but the homicides were up 10%. Is that correct?
Right, 10.8%.
And that's a pretty startling, concerning increase. Do you agree?
Yes, it is concerning.
Now, I don't know if you have data in 2016, but is your sense that 2016 is going to look closer to 2015, or will it be, is there any indication that the rate's going to go back down?
No, we continue to see spikes in some big cities in a way we can't quite make sense of. There's no doubt that some 15 to 30 cities are continuing to experience a spike. Whether that'll drive the whole number up, I don't know.
Now, the FBI has now assumed control of the Dahir Adan, the Minnesota stabbing terrorist investigation. Is that confirmed that that was a terrorist attack at this point?
We're still working on it. It does look like, at least in part, he was motivated by some sort of inspiration from radical Islamic groups. Which groups and how, we're not sure of yet.
But he was praising Allah, was asking at least one of the potential victims whether they were Muslim, and I know ISIS did take responsibility for it, correct?
They claim responsibility. That isn't dispositive for us, because they'll claim responsibility for any savagery they can get their name on. But we're going through his entire electronic record and history of all of his associations to try and understand that.
Now, there was a report from the House Homeland Security last year that said that Minnesota was actually the #1 source for ISIS fighters in the United States. One, do you acknowledge that, or do you agree that that's true? And if so, why is Minnesota churning out so many jihadists?
I don't know for sure whether that's true, but it sounds about right. We have very few ISIL fighters from the United States, even over the last 2 years. There have been a number of Somali American heritage young men who've gone to fight with al-Shabaab in Somalia and with ISIL. I suspect the reason is that's one of the few areas in the United States where we have a large concentration susceptible to that recruiting. The great thing about America is everybody's kind of dispersed. That's one of the areas where there's an immigrant Muslim community that seems to be susceptible for some reason. In small measure, again, we're talking about 8 people, I think the number is. But that's my reaction to that.
Well, what's the FBI doing to deal with the problem? You have an insular community that may make this problem more significant. So how is the FBI combating that?
Oh, in a bunch of different ways. With lots of partners to make sure we know the folks especially the Somali American community in Minneapolis. The U.S. Attorney there has done a great job.
Have they been helpful with the FBI?
Very, because they don't want their sons or daughters involved in this craziness any more than anybody else does.
Now, with Paul Combetta, I'm just trying to figure out what happened here. He never said that he remembered anything from that March 25th phone conversation with the Clinton people. Of course, that was days before he bleach-bitted the emails. He never said he had any factual knowledge of anything that happened on that call. Is that his basic statement? So I read the 302s. He didn't really provide any information.
I can't remember for sure it'd be in the 302. You've probably seen it more recently.
Well, I saw one 302 said that he pled the 5th. Obviously, he was given immunity. Another said that there was an invocation of attorney-client privilege at one time in one of the other summaries. So I'm just trying to figure out, what happened with Combetta. Why was he not able to provide information? He had immunity. This was something that was much more fresh in his mind than previous conversations with Clinton people would have been. And yet you said he was credible. To me, feigning ignorance, that is not credible given the timeline where you have the New York Times saying that this server existed. The House immediately sends a subpoena. He has this conversation, and then lo and behold, a few days later, all the emails are bleach-bitted.
Oh, he told us that with immunity, that no one directed him to do it, instructed him to do it. We developed no evidence to contradict that. Again, we're never in the business of believing people. The question is always, what evidence do we have that establishes disbelief? We don't have any contrary evidence. His account is uncontradicted by hard facts.
Well, he's in a situation where he has, these things are now under a subpoena, and he has conversations with people who they potentially could implicate, and then he takes this action. So I guess the question is it more reasonable to think that he just would have said, oh, you know what, I just need all of a sudden Bleachbit this stuff without any direction at all? I just find that to be something that is difficult to square. Let me ask you this. In September, you sent a memo to your employees at the FBI basically defending the way the Bureau handled this investigation. Why'd you send that?
It was about how we were doing transparency, because there was all kinds of business about whether we were trying to hide stuff by putting it out on a Friday, and I wanted to equip our workforce with transparency about how we were doing our productions to Congress so they can answer questions from their family and friends. I want them to know we're conducting ourselves the way they would want us to.
And because you mentioned former agents and people in the community, I mean, this has provoked some controversy within the ranks of current and former agents?
Not within the FBI. Again, who knows what people don't tell the director? But I should have asked Mr. Gohmert. If there are agents of the FBI who are concerned or confused about this, please contact me. We'll get you the transparency you need to see that your brothers and sisters did this the way you would want them to.
All right, I'm out of time, but I will say just when I was in the military, you had said no one would be prosecuted. I mean, maybe that was just for civilian, but I can tell you that people, if you had compromised top secret information, there would have been a court-martial in your future, and I yield back.